Hello and welcome to this interview series ahead of Big Data and AI World on the 6th and 7th of March at XL London. I'm Rebecca Uppendale, tech reporter at Techarati. Today, my guest is Shiren Patel, Interim Head of Digital Research Environment and Innovation Technology Consultant at Great Ormond Street Hospital, and Pavithra Rajendran, NLP Technical Lead and Senior Data Scientist at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Shiren and Pavi will appear at Big Data and AI World in March, but today we're going back in time to talk about 3 significant years in Shiren and Pavi's life that has shaped their life and career. So thank you so much for being part of this interview series. Shiren, what is the first year of significance you would like to talk about?
Certainly, the first year for me is, in fact, my first job straight after university. And that was with one of the large technology consultancies. It was a major shift from being a student and then having to earn some living. It was a totally different mode, having to work lots of long hours, being responsible for doing things now as opposed to just getting on and doing as and when I wanted to as a student. But certainly working in a technology consultancy allowed me to kind of understand how a business works, how a large corporation works, how to interact with clients, because we had a number of different clients. There are so many different things within different industries that the consultancy was involved in. So therefore the breadth of kind of knowledge of exposure was quite significant and quite varied, and quite interesting. I went on to kind of specialize within the finance industry, and I did had a number of more projects within that particular industry.
What were some of the key responsibilities, or were there any projects you're particularly proud of at that time?
Yeah, so there were, as I mentioned, there was mainly in finance, a couple of insurance clients that we had at that point in time, and really being able to very quickly develop and work within a methodology. So the consultancy had developed their own methodology of how things should be working, and it was very much kind of like you felt is because it was a large corporation, you're very much a small cog in such a huge wheel there, but the churn of that wheel really meant that the individual cogs have to deliver their own little pieces itself as well. So there were major kind of deliverables from my end in terms of delivering specific pieces of code. At that point, I was a developer, and in fact working on COBOL, an ancient language for now, but developing COBOL. And we were responsible for delivering individual pieces that, if you didn't get right, meant that the further downstream pieces wouldn't work itself as well. So it was just as important to deliver your own little piece as opposed to the larger solution itself as well.
And so do you have a kind of a mantra, or as you said, there's a methodology you work to? Do you have a personal one that kind of followed you throughout your career?
It's an interesting point. I do. My mantra really is to be able to work hard, to understand the environment you're in, and it could be various different environments that you're in. But it's important for you to first of all understand a new environment, and it'll also be a new environment regardless of whether you're in the same industry or not. It'll be a different client, it'll be a different organization, different groups of people itself as well. So it's initially it's very much kind of getting the feel of the land, understanding what's going on, and then certainly to work hard and really leave as and when you leave that particular team, area, department, or even the organization. I would very much like to leave it in a better place than when I started.
So Pavi, what was your first year of significance?
So my first year would be my PhD in computer science, specifically in natural language processing. So coming from a technical background, I thought it was programming was what constitutes computer science. But moving into my PhD, I kind of understood, like how do you do research on a very specific topic, and to read research papers, to understand the gaps. And it's not just about writing the program, so it's not just about coding, it's much more. I learned about the importance of annotation, clean data quality, and that definitely helped me in my career.
And I'm guessing transitioning from academia to industry is all quite different, and it can be quite a big jump. What were some of the adjustments you had to make during that time, moving from your PhD to now in your first year at this year?
It was a big jump because all the data that you see in your PhD or research is very clean, and moving into industry is you need to kind of broaden your skills as well, even if it's natural language processing. For me, during my PhD, it was very, very specific to a topic, but into industry, you need to start exploring it, maybe not too specific, but you need to kind of understand how do you bring the academic research into practicality. And then there's data's never going to be clean. There's big data, large volumes of data. How do we start like bringing them into a standard form that's easier to be used?
And so could you describe a little bit about your PhD focus during this time when you were studying?
So it was more on a topic called argument mining. So we kind of try to bring theoretical aspects of computational argumentation and then empirically use natural language processing techniques to analyze how useful it is on real world data.
And so how long ago are we talking when you were studying?
I started my PhD in 2015.
2015, that's almost a decade ago now. Where do you see NLP going?
I think I kind of finished it pre-LLM period. So at that point, there was no research on these LLMs or how much with ChatGPT coming now. But I still think there's lots of scope, especially at Great Ormond Street Hospital. We have tons of unstructured data. It need not just be LLMs. There's so much you could do with this data to bring them into a proper structured form.
Shiren, what was your second year significance?
The second year was when I transitioned from a large corporation to a small software house. And that was quite an interesting period there itself. It's where effectively went from a small cog in a large wheel to a large cog in a small wheel type of analogy there. And I had to kind of roll my sleeves up in order to do anything and everything that was required in that development house. And that was a very kind of not as easy transition, and only because you in a large corporation you're expecting a number of things to be already there, and whereas you move into a small software house and you find that you're having now to develop those pieces because they're not there as well. So it was from one extreme to the other extreme, and that certainly challenged me to be able to adapt to that environment, and again the mantra of coming in and then leaving a place better than what you originally found it. I hope I kind of succeeded in doing that. So, certainly from a personal point of view, I did that. But I hope I succeeded in leaving the organization in a better place than what I found. In terms of one of the significant deliverables and I guess outputs that we had in that small environment was that we were one of the very early organizations, I wouldn't say the first, but very early organizations to deliver electronic statements. So previous statements were all paper-based, and you had to wait a month to get your transactions. But we then put them online. And so effectively took a lot of the reports which had these statements, and then we had utilities to then convert those reports into online, and then we delivered it on through the website itself as well. So and we did that for a obviously a financial institution. And they were one of the very early ones who had been able to provide that on a per individual account basis itself as well. So very proud of being able to deliver that. It was although it was a long project, but because you were a small team, there was a lot of pressure in being for you to deliver all the different components, because it wasn't just one entire big solution. We had a number of components that we had to integrate together to deliver this. And to deliver this for a demanding financial institution itself, in terms of timing, was quite challenging and very enjoyable at the same time.
You've spoken a bit about being a big cog and also a small cog and various different sizing of machines. How is it that you get these cogs oiled well?
Initially, I guess it's a lot of inner self-belief, in that you can easily transition from one environment to the other. And then it's a lot of relationship building internally itself as well. And you may have a brilliant idea, but in a small cog, that brilliant idea doesn't necessarily get to be implemented. Whereas in a smaller organization, you have a brilliant idea, and you have then you'll then require the ability to then persuade people, because you have that exposure for you to be able to do that, but you need to persuade them to be able to do that itself as well. And so that does give you an opportunity to actually talk to the various people, understand from each I guess individual what their lens looks like, and what's important to them, and then therefore being able to adapt and accommodate their requirements in order for your idea to be then well received itself as well. But certainly it's a question of being able to not only go further up the chain, but also further down the chain. You need to be able to communicate really well. You need to bring everyone along on that same journey for you to be able to get your ideas through, and then to be able to engage them in and land them all on the same page itself as well. It's only when you kind of do that, I think then it will start working. But initially it's very difficult, and it's something similar here at Gosh as well. We're going through a transitioning where we had a small team of just 2 or 3 individuals now to a team of 10-15 people, and even in that small increase, there is a change that's required. Everyone does need to be part of that same goal and pointing in the same direction, and it's only then that you'll be able to get there smoother, and therefore be able to keep that machine well oiled.
And Pavi, how about your second year? Do you kind of resonate a lot with sharing the journey there, or is it kind of a bit more separate?
Yeah, I think mine, like moving from PhD into industry, PhD was like you take the ownership, whereas into industry you need communication is the key, and you need to start adapting yourself to the team, to the organization. It's not just your individual work, it's a team work. And then because I worked in a consultancy, you need to know how to, it's not just about your technical expertise, how do you communicate it to the client? And you also need to set your expectations within the timelines. When you do a PhD, you're always like, I need to do the best, like it's never going to be perfect, and you're not convinced with the results and everything. But moving into industry, what I've learned is you're not going to get all your time for the project. It's always going to be short, and you need to do the best what you can and what would help the clients rather than what I can do from my technical side.
What are the kind of common challenges or misconceptions that people have going into client negotiations that are probably kind of misconstrued or miscommunicated?
Sometimes it's quite difficult to explain some things in a non-technical, in layman's terms. So you need to start developing that communication. And the other thing, like with all the hype, like for example, ChatGPT or Google's new model, people are going to know about AI, they're going to know about everything, and they're going to kind of think, okay, this could solve their problems, but it's up to us to kind of help them understand, like, for your project you don't actually need ChatGPT. All you need to do is data cleaning, and it's going to solve 90% of your problem.
Like these rapidly evolving technologies, what do you anticipate as becoming the next big trend, if any?
There's definitely lots of scope for LLMs and like text generation, but I do think practically for industry or even within healthcare, you can do a lot of things without the LLMs. You can start simple with simple baselines. And I think one of the most important thing, even at Gosh, what we are trying to do is have a proper infrastructure, because without the infrastructure, just trying to start thinking about LLMs or like all these huge models is not going to help.
And so finally, let's move on to a third year of significance. Shiren, what have you selected?
I've selected the year when I transitioned into NHS. So prior to then, it was very much in the private sector, in the financial industry itself, and then coming from there into NHS. Very different organizations, very different ways of working in these organizations, and again goes back to the transition I spoke of earlier, where you need to understand the workings of that organization, the workings of the individuals and teams within that organization. So yeah, it was quite a challenging, again, a very challenging role to transition to. Previously, a lot of decisions are made fairly quickly in the private industry. You come into the public sector, and quite rightly, there's a lot of bureaucracy that goes along with it, because it's after all, it's a public money, and we need to make sure that we're spending it wisely and appropriately. So there is that challenge that we have as to we want to deliver things quickly, but we need to go through an appropriate process to be able to deliver that. And at the same time, public sector is always funding is a challenge for the public sector, and so we're having to work out and understand different ways of working and trying to resolve the solution in different ways. Whereas in private sector, you'd be able to kind of, as long as you persuade someone, you'd be able to go out and fund whatever project you have. So that in itself is a great challenge. But I've now kind of moved within different NHS trusts, and I'm very fortunate and privileged to now work at Gosh. And especially in their drive team, which is their innovation arm, where we look at new technologies. We look at different ways of how we can utilize the technology. But the reason I say it's fortunate and privileged is that Gosh is a really a very huge brand out there, and lots of people want to work with us. Lots of outside external organizations want to work with us, both private and public itself as well, and both within not only the UK but also outside of UK, and globally it's a brand there as well. So lots of people want to work with us, and so in terms of the types of projects that we get and the types of challenges that we have to continuously innovate is constantly posed to us, and kind of sometimes even just comes up at our doorstep when we weren't even looking for it. So it's wonderful how we can such a brand often opens up a lot of doors for us itself as well. And what we're trying to do is that not only for Gosh to be the leading and the innovator in the pediatric world, because we're a children's specialist hospital, But we'd also like to share our ideas and share some of our kind of deliverables that we have, not only internally within GOSH, but externally within the NHS itself as well. Constantly hear that why reinvent the wheel, and that's such also a true mantra there itself as well. And if someone else has done it, we will take that on, and if we've done it, we will offer it to other organizations that helps us. So that is the sharing of internally within the NHS itself. I think is growing more and more. And that's something obviously you don't get in the private industry, in the private sector, where your IP is, you want to hold on to it as much as possible. Whereas here in the public sector, let's share as much as we can.
And Pavi, what's your final year?
Yeah, same for me as well. It's like moving into public sector, like things are completely different. It's going to be slow, you have governance, but the impact that you bring into research, or like once you get the data out for more research, and the impact it's going to bring on the children here, like that feeling is completely, like it brings a sense in yourself, like you feel so happy doing the research here, the work here. It's completely different. Like, I agree with Shiren. Yeah,
I can sense your passion. I'm sure everyone next week, when they come to Big Data and AI World, be able to learn more about your journey, and also learn more about what you do and how your work really does contribute to bettering people's lives and children's lives. Is there anything you'd both like to share before your session next week?
It will be an interesting talk in the challenges that we face within the public sector, and how we've kind of tried to overcome those challenges. And we certainly haven't overcome all the hurdles. There's still a few more to go, and a few large ones to go itself as well. But I think the way we've kind of done it with small chunks at a time, rather than trying to go directly straight into, for example, cloud, which we could have done. But that's one of the challenges that we've talked about, or I've been talking about, is that funding is something that's not really readily available. So we do need to be careful of whether we do it internally or whether we do it externally in the cloud itself as well. But preparing yourself for being able to move into and transition into cloud is really important itself as well, and that will then allow you to be able to not effectively have the huge costs that we normally hear about when people move into the cloud itself as well. So I think making those smaller bits, and then also making it available within the environment and within GOSH itself as well, we've already identified and the potential savings, and also the impact that it's had on not only our development team, but also now what we're able to offer to our clinicians itself as well.